better than anyone I know. Today, Jill is at Georgetown University, and she's written a new book, My Russia, What I Saw Inside the Kremlin. And on Friday, September 26th, I'm sponsoring a special book signing event for Jill at the Hanover Theater in Worcester. Jill will walk you through her 50-year relationship with Russia, beginning as a college student at the University of Leningrad, to her personal relationships with Mikhail Gorbachev, Boris Yeltsin, and Vladimir Putin. She'll discuss her time at CNN and countless interviews with U.S. presidents and other world leaders. And following Jill's talk, there'll be an open question and answer period moderated by former Congressman Peter Bluth, followed by her book signing. This event is completely complimentary. It's sponsored by my company, Boston Independence Group, but seating is limited, so be sure to reserve your spot today for this memorable evening by calling 877-772-1776. That's 877-772-1776.
It was another quiet night at the office. No phone calls, no messages, nothing but junk mail and overdue bills to keep me company. Seems nobody wants to hire a real private dick anymore, a professional like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics. We are the show! You want to know? It's time to talk to you.
All right, folks, welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and you can join the conversation for the next hour at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Don't forget our text line is up and running at 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. It appears on the screen here in the studio in real time. We'll work it into the conversation. And don't forget that we do stream 24/7, as do thousands of other radio stations, full-time, 24 hours, 7 days a week on the TuneIn app. If you don't have it, it takes seconds to download it. Then punch in WCRN. You'll see our cool logo. Do me a favor, hit the like button. We know you're there. And, of course, we're easy to find. You can tell Alexa to play WCRN. She'll do that, no questions asked. We do stream the show from the WCRN studios, our palatial but not overly ostentatious studios in Westborough, Massachusetts. So you can go to our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and I do stream to my platforms at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I. So that's X and Facebook and Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile, and we do stream live to Rumble. We have our own channel. We don't load it up later. We do it live to Rumble. Today, Behind the Glass, Find the Board today. He'll get you set up and into the studio for two-way talk and conversation. So today we had President Trump at the United Nations, folks. Big change, right? From 2016 to today, he addressed the UN General Assembly in New York. He criticized multinational, multilateral institutions, globalism, climate change policies, immigration norms, European energy dependence. And he claimed the UN has underperformed and has ignored various peace efforts by the U.S. And, of course, he wouldn't be a Trump speech without calling climate initiatives a scam. And he defended the imposition of the position of the U.S. tariffs. I guess the jury's still out on tariffs. I think they're fine, and they're doing a fine job on it. But his speech centered on U.S. National interest, and he pushed back against these multilateral institutions that Trump says fail to deliver. You know, remember when Nikki Haley was at the UN? I think she did a fantastic job, and she didn't really let anyone get an inch on the U.S. when it was there. But Trump speaking today, he comes with years now as a president, and then that gap year, or the gap term, I should say, not a year. I maintain, I've said it before, guys, and I'm going to say it again. I think that the fact that Trump is doing 2 terms non-consecutive, actually in the bigger picture, is probably a good thing for us. It gave him 4 years, and those 4 years he was out of office. Yeah, he was playing golf. He was being a billionaire. He was doing his thing, but he was also planning his second term. Absolutely. And it just made the Trump train a little bit longer and a little bit more powerful. And he came back no longer a neophyte to D.C. And when he went in 2016 or went in 2017, I should say, sworn in as president, he counted on the establishment to guide him. He counted on the senators from these states to kind of tell him, oh yeah, what U.S. attorney should stay here, things of that nature. And he didn't know, but he had that first term, and then he had the second term to really think about who he wanted and what he wanted to do in a second term. And that's why we saw, or we're seeing in 7, 8, 9 months of his second term, non-consecutive, the speed at which this administration are getting things done. And it's pretty phenomenal. Absolutely. At the speed and the amount that's getting done, that most, I mean, you want to compare achievement to 4 years of Joe Biden. Now we've got a new whistleblower, Ted. I don't know if you caught this story. I don't want to get into it till it's vetted out a little more. But one of these whistleblowers coming out talking about the fact that Joe Biden, again, this is according to a whistleblower, and there is stories out there, but they're going to be vetted, they're going to be looked at, and they're going to be figured out. But the point is, this whistleblower is saying that Joe Biden was actually diagnosed with dementia in 2022, and at that time, it was orchestrated that they were going to control him, and they, meaning the staff in the West Wing, were told that Obama was going to take over at that point. So now you put that against the backdrop, and many of you I know listening right now is going to remember this because we've referenced it on the show and we played the clip of it before. When in an interview, when he was asked, and I think it was Stephanopoulos he was talking to, asked him about, would you want a third term? And his answer was, well, if I could be in my sweats, in my basement with a headset on, and somebody else was out there doing the ceremonies and riding on Air Force One and doing all that, but I could just talk in the headset and it comes out there, yeah, I'd do that. That would be fine. I just don't want to go through being the president again. So he found the perfect guy, Joe Biden, who just wanted to ride Air Force One, wear the bomber jacket in the Ray-Bans, in the hat, and do all of that part of it. And it seemed like whether this was orchestrated or not, he got his wish in a lot of ways. And so again, stories out there. I haven't seen it vetted. I haven't seen talk, but it'd be interesting. Whistleblowers sometimes don't seem to get a lot of traction. So we'll see what happens. Before we have to go to the break, in the news, they talked about this SIM farm telecom network. They discovered blocks from the UN. So the Secret Service announced that it dismantled a very large clandestine SIM farm telecom network in New York, about 35 miles away from the United Nations, the UN headquarters in New York. And the investigators say it included 300 SIM servers and more than 100,000 SIM cards. Now, you might be saying, well, what does this mean? So what? Well, it has the capacity to send millions of texts per minute. It could have been used to jam networks, mass communications, cripple cellular service, and emergency communications. And the forensic teams are now analyzing data from the devices. And authorities say the infrastructure was linked to encrypted anonymous communications used by criminal organizations and possibly foreign threat actors. And the operation was uncovered as part of a broader probe into telecom threats to senior officials. So basically, the Secret Service doing their normal, security check discovered this. So this will be interesting how this unfolds. But think about the damage that they could have done on that.
Joe, I used to sell this equipment.
That's right. You did this for years.
And this equipment, every one of the 300 they mentioned is capable of having 12 systems operating. So it's like every server is 12 computers or 12 servers. So 300 times 12 will tell you the number of simulations or SIM card robberies they could perform.
Or just bring the entire communications network to a standstill. It would have been like 9/11, the morning of 9/11, where you couldn't make a phone call. But the spying that could go on in the encrypted communication was something else. 508-871-7000. Let me jump the phones real quick. Mark's been waiting patiently. Hey, Mark, what say you?
I watched the President of the United States address a General Assembly of the United Nations this morning. And what it looked like to me, it looked like a superior officer giving an enlisted man a military-style dressing down. Anybody who's been in the military, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, while you're getting that dressing down, you better not be stupid enough to open your mouth, because if you do, you will be hit with an Article 15 insubordination charge, and you will find yourself in the brig. Or if you not play your cards right, you could wind up in the old Portsmouth Naval Prison. Not a very pleasant place. So, yeah, he gave him a dressing down, and he laid his cards out on the table, and he said, listen, guys, this is the way it's going to go down here in the United States. You want to play ball with me? Fine. But if you don't, that's fine, too, and you're going to suffer the consequences. That's just what he said. I couldn't believe it, but he did it.
Yeah, he did it. Thank you, Mark, for the call. He absolutely did it, and he basically also warned them about continuing to buy energy from Russia. That they'll, and to Mark's point, he said you'll suffer the consequences if you continue to do that. And Trump firmly believes, and it absolutely, I believe too, makes sense. It's true that these nations, remember, Germany was totally dependent on Russia. And way back in his first term, remember Merkel, she laughed at him when he warned Germany not to be dependent. Because if you're dependent on Russia for your energy, they can shut it off at any time. But he warned them about buying energy from Russia. So let's see what those consequences will be. But, folks, we have to take our first break here on the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN, 508-871-7000. We'll be back in 2 and 2, folks. Stick with us.
Are you looking for a holistic approach to your health? One that supports your body's natural ability to regulate, adapt, regenerate, and heal? Look no further. The Bioregulatory Medical Institute, BRMI, a nonprofit global organization dedicated to advancing the science and art of bioregulatory medicine, welcomes you to their free and rich library of resources. You'll find articles, podcasts, videos, and more at brmi.online. BRMI believes health freedom is a basic human right, honoring medical ethics and the innate intelligence of the human body. When your body is properly supported, it will thrive. If you're looking for the root cause of illness, physical, emotional, or spiritual, visit brmi.online. brmi.online.
We invite you to listen each weekday to the Old Trailblazer broadcast with Pastor Albert Pendarvis.
Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Oh, my friend.
That's the Old Trailblazer broadcast with Pastor Albert Pendarvis each weekday on this station.
Heard every weekday at 5:45 a.m. on WCRN AM 830.
Did you know your business loses $1,685 per employee each year? Poor health doesn't just mean sick days. It drains energy, lowers productivity, and impacts your bottom line. I'm Kelly Hamilton, certified holistic nutritionist, ICU nurse, and owner of A Better Path to Wellness. I help businesses create healthier workplaces so employees thrive and companies save money. Let's optimize the wellness and productivity of your team. Call 774-253-4934 today.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the second segment of the Tuesday afternoon edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Reminding folks you can always watch and listen on a multiple streaming platforms: Facebook, YouTube, X, LinkedIn, Twitch TV, and, of course, Rumble. You can follow me at my social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show, MANGI, and most people watch on Facebook and Rumble, but you can do it wherever you want. And also, the show is turned into a podcast when I get off the air, so you can subscribe to the Joe Mangiacotti Show as you would any podcast wherever you get them. Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, you know the drill on that. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Let me actually jump to the phones because Gary's been waiting patiently through the break. Hey, Gary, what say you?
Good afternoon, Joe. Joe, did you happen to see this just absolute lie that went around the internet this weekend about...
Narrow that down, Gary.
Yeah,
Which one, Gary?
Tom Holman accepted a $50,000 bribe and the FBI covered it up.
Tom Holman, yeah.
You're going to tell me that, first of all, MSNBC, Russia for 3 years, can be trusted with unnamed sources and no real evidence to present the story. And, of course, they played the game they usually play. MSNBC put it out, CNN reported on it and said MSNBC is reporting, and then all the rest of the usual suspects lined up and said, oh, multiple outlets are now reporting.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they don't think that we all know how this game is played.
And Gary, I'm glad you bring this up because just before I came in the studio, right, I'm scanning online, looking at headlines. And there is a headline on this story, and just for listeners who don't know what we're talking about, this story broke that Tom Homan, right, the border czar guy, the ICE, no, actually he's border, right, is no, he's actually ICE. He's ICE. Anyway, the point is, and remember, now this is a man who worked for decades for the Border Patrol in immigration. Then when Trump went out, he went into private sector and runs a multi-million-dollar business. He does it very, very well. And he gave that up for the government paycheck. So he's back here. There's the story that breaks that he accepted $50,000 like in the paper bag cash thing so that they could get bids in the new Trump administration. Now, it's been proven that there's no merit to it. It's a crock. But one of the headlines, Gary, that I see before I came in the studio is it says Tom Homan admitted to MSNBC reporting this. Now, at first glance, you see Tom Homan admitted, but they were thinking they were clever by saying Tom Homan admitted that MSNBC did the story. Whoa! So I know. So he acknowledges that this was a story that they reported on, not that he did the receiving of the $50,000 cash. But that, yes, I understand that this story has been reported, but it's not true and has no merit. It's been closed down and absolutely debunked. But do you see the game they play with the headline? I'm sorry?
We don't want to let any facts get in the way of our reporting.
Right. Don't ruin my story with good facts. Exactly. Yeah, no, there's nothing to the story. And again, Gary points out the game that they played with this.
Well, they needed to change the subject off of Charlie Kirk because it's killing them.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they release a new video with some left-wing lunatic coming out and going, oh, yeah, no, I'm glad he's dead, all of a sudden, if it's absolutely possible, their polling numbers go even further south. At this point, I got to imagine we're in negative territory because it absolutely amazes me that somehow they were trying to, of course, when Charlie Kirk was killed, they tried to spin the story. Well, it's gun violence. Charlie Kirk was murdered. No, Charlie Kirk was not murdered. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. It has nothing to do with gun violence. It has to do with the fact that he was assassinated by a left-wing lunatic. And try to change the subject all you want, but it's kind of hard to get away from those first 2 points.
Yeah, and Jasmine Crockett's comments, well, they were all disgusting across the board. And here's the thing: they want to drop these accusations about being a racist and this and that. And I'm sorry, if you either saying that or worse, regurgitating it without knowing what you're talking about, all you need to do is spend a little time, and not days, not endless hours, a little time going through Charlie Kirk's videos. Go to the videos. I was saying this yesterday, Gary. Trust me, all you got to do is watch one, and the algorithm will send you a million of them, so you can see all kinds of things. And guys, remember, he would go with a folding table to these universities in the belly of the beast, in the bastion of liberalism, and give his mic, because you're very bad fascists, right? Very bad fascists, because he would give his microphone to anybody who wanted to speak and disagree with him. And of course, he got accused at these things of being a racist, a fascist, and it just simply asked them, okay, I hear you. Give me one example of what I said or did that makes me a racist. Now, when they can't absolutely come up with anything, or what they think was racist, and then he breaks it down point by point, that it's not racist. This is just facts. Like I think it was AOC who was talking how he was against the 1964, and remember, it's AOC. So she said against the 1964 civil rights legislation that gave blacks the right to vote. Now, she's only off by like a century, right? So AOC is thinking that the 1964 civil rights legislation, that's what gave blacks the ability to vote. That's what you're dealing with. And then when he gets into it, because if you go watch him talk about it, he talks about how it divided on the party lines, and that what resulted in that, in the affirmative action, in that in itself is racist, which, by the way, I have pointed out that countless times on my show, which is apparently why I get called a racist, because they're not listening to the words. They're already thinking about how they're going to answer before they let and digest the point here.
Well, I've always said you can always tell a progressive, you just can't tell them much, because once their mind is made up, I mean, and this should be a wake-up call to rhinos everywhere. These people do not, I mean, they've taken shots at the executive branch. They've taken shots at the judicial branch. They've taken shots at the at the legislative branch. Mm-hmm. So they've already hit the trifecta of all three parts of government. Now they're going after spokespeople for the people that are actually speaking and making sense on the right. And you sit there and, like you said, you can argue with them until you are blue in the face. You can present them every fact in the world. You could have Christ come down from heaven, point at you and say, this man is 100% correct. And they still don't care. They want you gone. The rhinos need to wake up. They don't want you. They don't want to compromise with you. They don't want to shake your hand at the end of the day and say, oh, good legislation. They want you gone from politics. Yeah. They want you gone from society. They want you gone from the planet. If you talk to any leftist long enough, that's exactly the conclusion that they come to every single time. Because when they start to argue, when they realize they don't have a leg to stand on, they get angry. And when they get angry, they just want you to go away and stop talking. And they made Charlie Kirk go away and stop talking. Even though he put out like you said, he put out a sign and said, please come debate me. I'll give hundreds of people the opportunity to debate me. I'll give thousands of people the opportunity to try and come and debate me. And
absolutely, Gary. And that makes you a very bad fascist, or Hitler in that case, when you give your microphone to the opposing argument and take it and listen to it and then bring it back. And to your point about that, when you engage them in those issues, in those debates, and you break it down, and they realize that, now, I mean, the old, the transgender issue, right? Because they'll ask them, what is a woman? And when they reduce it to basically describing, well, they wear, long hair and earrings and this, so a woman to you is a costume. I mean, however he breaks this down, that's when they resort to the name calling. So the far left feels that the only way to handle it is just not allow you to speak in the first place, to eliminate your ability to speak. And that's how they feel they win. By eliminating anybody who opposes you doesn't mean you're right, and it doesn't mean you won the argument. It means you eliminated any opposition. And I've said this before, I've talked about this before, and thank you for the call, Gary, appreciate it. Way back when Trump first ran and he came down the escalator, my very leftist younger sister was so upset of this. And I forget where what family gathering we were at, when she said, "Oh my God, we got to stop him. We can't allow this man to be president. We can't let him speak." I said, "Well, what? Not you don't mean speak. You mean you can't let him win. You're going to work against him winning. You're going to, through debates and no. We just can't let him talk. We can't even let him be heard." And right there, I saw in my younger sister, this is what we're going to be dealing with for the foreseeable future. 10 years later, that's exactly what we're dealing with. And now that they can't bring Trump down, and they've tried, they're going to start going after everybody around him. Now, Hakeem Jeffries just made a comment, I think it was earlier today, about if they get back in power, they're going to go after and dismantle all those who have supported Trump. That alone should be reason enough not to allow the current Democratic Party to be ever back in power or to win. Now, if they do a house cleaning and if they do a reset, that's one thing. But look who they have coming up. They've got AOC. Bernie Sanders, he's there. Too old. He's not running again, right? They already stole the presidential nomination from him with Hillary. Fact, that's done. Gavin Newsom, he just did this ICE masking thing, right? We'll talk about that in a second. And now they're taking a socialist, democratic socialist. Have you noticed these qualifying terms that they always put in front of it? And as those who are watching this observe, he's a social. He should be in the Socialist Party, not the Democratic Party. Because again, that qualifier in there, socialist Democrat. But he's not a Democrat. He's not even a blue dog Democrat. He's certainly not old school Democrat. And he certainly isn't a JFK Democrat. Yeah, Hillary. All right, folks, we got to take our mid-show break here on the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Lines are open and available. Join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And don't forget the text line running at 617-297-8388. We'll be back in 2 minutes, 2 seconds on the other side, folks. Stick with us.
Time now for the forecast from the Boston Independence Group Weather Center. Call Jerry Doherty today at 877-772-1776. Retirement is within reach.
I'm meteorologist Sherry Spear, and here's the latest Boston 25 weather on Radio 830 WCRN. It's going to be warm and humid, and honestly, it's going to be kind of summer-like this afternoon with highs near 80 degrees and some increasing clouds. North and west of Boston, we are expecting some afternoon showers and thunderstorms to develop. But in Boston and Worcester, it's probably a late chance for some rain that will continue overnight tonight. And you've got some occasional showers and drizzle through the day tomorrow. Temperatures tomorrow, by the way, are going to be quite a bit cooler with temperatures in the 60s all day long. I'm meteorologist Sherry Spear, and you can hear Boston 25 live for the Morning Drive weekdays on AM 830 WCRN.
More live and local radio is next. Stay tuned to Radio Central 830 WCRN.
This is Jerry Doherty, host of Making Money Last, right here on WCRN. Like all business owners, I'm interested in why people choose to work with Boston Independence Group. So I asked my clients. The most common response, Jerry does not try to be all things to all people. Boston Independence Group is specialized, focused solely on retirement planning. My customers enjoy the difference. We do one thing, and we do it exceptionally well. Help other people live better in retirement. That's it. If you're ready to retire or making plans to retire, we can do for you what we've done for hundreds of other retirees throughout New England. Live better in retirement. Just give me a call. I'll show you how. My toll-free number is 877-772-1776. Again, that number is 877-772-1776. And you can visit us on the web at bostonindependencegroup.com. bostonindependencegroup.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on Radio Central, AM 830 WCRN. You can join the conversation for the remainder of the hour at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Our text line is running at 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. That appears on the screen here in the studio in real time, and we try to work it into the conversation. Before I forget, I want to point out or remind you folks, if you didn't hear it, because I'm very excited that the space race is kind of back in town here. NASA yesterday announced its 24th astronaut candidate class, selecting 10 Americans out of over 8,000 applicants, right? That is seriously the few and the proud there. Now, the class is broken down to 6 women, 4 men. And the first time in NASA history, a class has more women than men in it. And among the selected are pilots and test pilots, engineers, a geologist, medical professionals, an undersea medical officer, one individual, Anna Menon, who has already flown in orbit via a private mission on the Polaris Dawn. So she's been in there. The candidates are going to now undergo 2 years of training, and they'll become eligible for future missions to low Earth orbit. In the Artemis program, that's the name of the program that we've set to go back to the moon. So the Artemis, or the moon program, and eventually Mars from there. So it could be one of these 10 people could be the first person, human being, to set foot on the red planet. So acting NASA Administrator Sean Duffy, all these former Fox people, right? At least cabinet positions. Duffy emphasized this is part of maintaining U.S. leadership in space, including competition with China. And it seems like Duffy has a real, he does not want China to get to the moon before we get back to the moon. He seems to be dead set against that, although China in the space race is ahead of us. But so was Russia in the 50s, so it's Sputnik and so forth, right? So they put their first satellite in orbit, Yuri, right? The first man to orbit the Earth. But we jumped ahead with the Apollo missions and, of course, getting to the moon. So there's a very rigorous selection of 8,000 applicants. In the private sector, right, you've got SpaceX, Virgin, they do very low orbit. I don't know if they really go into space. I think they're at the edge of space. I'm not sure on that. They're low Earth, but I'm not sure if they technically cross into space like SpaceX does. But one of them had a flight on the Polaris Dawn mission. So they're being integrated in with the government agencies, a hybrid model that represents the free market plus public-private partnership in space. And that's pretty much, I think, the future of it, right? Because we had Hilton back in the 60s wanted to buy the rights to the first Hilton on the moon. I mean, that's how far back that idea goes. But sovereign nation state competition, especially with China, is centrally acknowledging that the space policy increasingly part of national security and border sovereignty. And that's a big reason that Trump created the Space Force in the first term, which I thought was long overdue. I mean, think about it. Since the Air Force was created, right? We didn't have the Air Force actually till 1947, although in World War II, we had what was called the Army Air Corps. And then they decided to make another branch of government called the Air Force. And they basically said, A through M, you're in the Army, N through Z, you're in the Air Force now. That's how they got the personnel. But of course, it developed. Now, with satellites which control everything, the communication, right? Television, all of it. It's so important that future wars will be fought in space. And if you have the ability to basically orbit the Earth and just snag satellites out of orbit, you're going to dominate space. So anyway, space race is back, right? It's here. I was born a couple years before we landed on the moon. And then in the 80s, 70s into the 80s, we had the shuttle program. And I just assumed as a young guy and a kid that we were going back to the moon on a regular basis. I think those 73 was the last time we went. Why? Why did we stop going to the moon?
When I was growing up and traveling internationally once a year, we belonged to the Pan American Clipper Club. And I think I still have the ticket that I was given for the first Pan American flight to the moon.
Yeah, they really in the 60s, and they really looked in, the Jetsons cartoon. That's what they thought we would be living like back in the day. But anyway,
Roll, jet roll.
Yeah, Spacely Sprocket 508-871-7000. Let me go to the phone. Ken's been waiting patiently. Hey, Ken, what say you?
Hi, Joe. Your topic is different than the one I'm going to go to, but
that's fine.
Answer your question. Why are we not still having space race? Because the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. Russia is in collapse. There's nothing to race. They have no resources.
Yeah, but it didn't collapse in 73. Like we stopped in 73, and it wasn't until 1989 that the Soviet Union collapsed.
Well, then the next biggest or orb to go was way too far distance, Mars, and expensive. So
yeah. Well, it depends. If you believe the lost NASA tapes and John Glenn, that the craft were waiting at the edge of the crater telling us to go back, we weren't ready. That's if you want to believe that stuff.
Yeah,
you know those stories, right?
Not really, but
okay.
Anyway, I have another topic. So yesterday was big news on Tylenol.
Yeah.
And, I get in early, I get up early. So up here in New Hampshire, there's a 10 o'clock version of the only New Hampshire station. And so I just happened to flip to it. Big mistake. Because right off you could see they were going to talk about this. And what do they start off with? President Trump without any evidence.
Yeah. Here we go.
And I just shut it off.
Mm-hmm.
I had it. That's the equivalent of getting spat in your face. Remember when we were kids, they call it a hawker? Well,
yeah. We really sucked it up from your gut.
That's basically what I felt like.
Yeah.
And we know why this is the case. It's not hard to figure out. Where's that bread buttered? It's from all the big pharma commercials.
Mm-hmm.
So from a corporate perspective, I'm sure everybody in the office, they're not about giving us the truth, news, reporting. They're all about making sure we survive. And they've told the staff, when it comes to big pharma, you have to protect it. And you have to attack anybody who attacks it.
Yeah.
That's the story.
But you got to remember, Ken, that whether it's MSNBC, CNN, whatever, these are the same networks that were just a few years ago telling us that we have to stay 6 feet away from each other, which was some arbitrary number, that we have to wear and mask up. You got to get the vaccination, which wasn't even a vaccine by the definition of a vaccine. It was a RHMI thing, MA thing that went after your spike protein. It had nothing to do with letting your antibodies build a defense to dead tissue or an inert tissue they put into you, which is what a vaccine is. The name experimental was in the title, and they forced us to take it. I mean, that's in violation of the Geneva Convention, for Christ's sakes. So these are the people who lied to us about masks, the shot, the effectiveness of it, the distance. I mean, all of this, it was all made up, and it was all a lie. So I'm not sure, and if I'm ready to believe anything that they put on there, and it goes back to this, you got to do your own research. You got to listen to all the doctors out there. That's the other thing. Remember, they were shutting down doctors with the same type of medical degrees that the doctors they were promoting and telling you have to listen to, and when they were challenged, which is absolutely against the scientific process, right? The scientific process is to duplicate something over and over in lab conditions and to challenge it and then have peer review. They wouldn't allow the peer review. They wouldn't allow the challenge. They wouldn't allow any questions. Ted, you wanted
The
to
scientific process requires an antithesis before you establish the thesis.
And that was not done. This was, I know, and Trump tells this story about how he would get this negative reaction when he'd go into the rallies or whatever appearance, and he'd want to brag about Operation Warp Speed and the jab, and everybody was booed and didn't want to hear it. He's like, why don't they want to hear it? And I think it was the country singer. It was one of the country singers who said, you really want to know the truth on this. And I know this because I watched him on his podcast telling it. And Lindsey Graham was across the table, I guess, drinking his white wine. And he basically told Lindsey Graham to just shut up. The adults were talking. And he said, because of the fact that it was all, don't do it. It doesn't help you. It circumvented all of the tests, all of the Food and Drug Administration trials. It, on top of everything else, it exempted them. They took all the liability away from the pharmaceutical companies. So they want to put an experimental drug into you, force you to take it with absolutely no liability on their part whatsoever. Was that a smart thing for us to accept?
In the brevity of time, I have a solution for all the Tylenol situation. Just listening to another show. You know what the solution is? What they're doing in Iceland. You put a cold compress on your head instead of taking the Tylenol. You know what our mothers and grandmothers did forever, 50 plus years ago.
Sometimes low-tech solution is really, the answer. Yeah.
To avoid autism.
Yeah.
Not a hard solution. But we have to ring it out and attack the president because he dared to challenge Big Pharma.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Ken, we're against the clock. Thank you. Final word on that, or that was it? That was it. Cold compress. Very simple.
You can't charge for a cold
exactly. Compress. You can't charge for a lot of ivermectin. Look at what they did to that. It was around for 50, 60 years, but you couldn't use it. I found out when I was a kid and you didn't feel good, you could get a hot toddy, which was a little whiskey in the coffee. And so, that was your workaround as a kid if you wanted a little buzz. But anyway, we have to take a third and final break here in the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. We'll be back 2 minutes, 2 seconds on the other side, folks. Stick with us.
Looking for a fuel and food stop that truly stands out? Experience the Yatco difference. At Yatco, we're dedicated to bringing you the best customer service, the highest quality products, and a commitment to making your life on the go easier. Yatco has 15 convenient locations across central Massachusetts, and now our newest spot at 75 Quonsigamut Ave in Worcester. Yatco, where every stop keeps you going.
The U.S. spends more on healthcare than any other nation, yet ranks last in health outcomes. Most doctors see 2,000 plus patients and spend under 15 minutes per visit. That's not care. It's diagnose and adios. You deserve better. Join biochemist and health coach Phil George on Wellness Wave Radio weekends at 7 a.m. for real science, real solutions, and a better path to wellness. Contact Phil at philgeorge@charter.net. Your health revolution starts now.
Have you noticed past the age of 30, your energy level, mood, skin, and body has changed, and maybe not for the better? It may have to do with DHEA levels. DHEA is an important building block for more than 50 different hormones, and the body naturally produces DHEA. We make the most DHEA in our prime between the ages of 18 to 25. DHEA levels decline each year in men and women after about age 30. Research has established that maintaining healthy DHEA levels may help us feel more energetic, help reduce belly fat, and help us get a better night's sleep. Often, youthful levels of DHEA are tied to good health, while declining levels can contribute to an assortment of common health problems. Twist 25 is a high-quality DHEA supplement cream that absorbs easily into the skin, leaving no odor or oily residue. To learn more, visit twist25.com or call toll-free 888-489-4782. Look and feel your best with Twist 25, 888-489-4782.
All right, folks, welcome back to the fourth and final segment here on the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN Radio Central. You can join the conversation for the time we have left together at 508-871-7000. Don't forget that we do stream from the studios in the Cameo Cam and the WCRN cameras in our studios on my social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show, MANGI, Facebook, X, LinkedIn profile, Twitch TV, and of course on Rumble. And I know that we've played it, but if you haven't heard, coming Friday at 5 o'clock, Jill Doherty, yes, the sister of Jerry Doherty, our very own Jerry Doherty, who was with CNN for over 30 years. She was the Moscow bureau chief for CNN. She wrote a book, My Russia, What I Saw in the Kremlin. She was on my show a week ago tomorrow, last Wednesday. She joined me for majority of the show, actually. Very nice. And she's going to be signing the books. She'll give a little talk, 5 o'clock. It's going to be held at the Hanover Theater, and you're welcome to go. You need to it's free. Boston Independence Group, Jerry's company, is putting this on and hosting this. So if you go to bostonindependence.com, independencegroup.com, right at the top of the page, you just hit that link, register to go to this on Friday at 5 o'clock at the Hanover Theater. Jill will be in town. She's a very nice lady, very smart lady, and has great stories. After we got off the air, Ted, last Wednesday, we stayed talking for like 45 more minutes, and that's the 45 minutes I wish we could have aired. Because we weren't streaming and she wasn't on. She was just telling me the stories, and we chatted about what things were in Moscow. So I'm looking forward to that. Peter
already
Blue
got more than 100 registered. So
that's fantastic.
Just please register.
Register.
Now
It doesn't cost you anything. You're welcome to go, but you just need to have the head count and who's coming. Peter Blute will be emceeing the event. I'll be there, of course. And there'll be some other, I guess, WCRN people there as well. So anyway, I was going to ask you. You are going?
Be there.
All right, awesome.
I'm going to bring my wife of 45 years.
All right. Well, I guess Saturday will have to be for the girlfriend. You have to switch the nights.
Always.
That Friday was the wife. Friday is the wife. Saturday is the girlfriend. That's true. All right, 508-871-7000. So I mentioned this. I just voter fraud. I can't stand it because we know it exists, right? We were told, it doesn't exist. Then we have all these examples of it. Well, it exists, but it's not that much. Then we proved that actually, statistically, it does make a difference. So here we have in Arizona, the Senate commissioned an audit of the 2020 election in Maricopa County. And it was conducted by a firm called Cyber Ninjas. And they used other subcontractors to do this. But what the audit revealed, and when they reviewed the ballots in the voting machines, in the voter rolls, it produced a report that both confirmed Joe Biden's narrow win in Arizona, but it raised a lot of irregularities. And these are the things that have to be addressed, right? Things that got flagged, issues that were flagged, the ballots cast, no clear voter record, voters casting ballots from previous addresses, potential duplicate. All these discrepancies are happening. So what did they find? Well, first of all, let me be clear, because I've talked about this many times. If our elections are not secure, that's the end of the democracy as we know it. It just doesn't work if we do not have elected representation. If your vote isn't counted, if it's stolen, if it's diluted, it's the end of elected representation. Free and fair elections are the foundation of representative government, and irregularities undermine the trust in this. The public trust is gone. Just as our borders must be secure, so must our ballots. Otherwise, citizens' rights are diluted by ineligible or fraudulent votes. So officials, so the 2020 election, 2021, the Senate says, hey, we're going to do this audit. Officials resisted oversight. They resisted the subpoenas, raised questions about accountability, separation of powers. They did not want an accounting of this. And I've talked about this. Electronic systems and mass mail-in voting they're creating vulnerabilities. They're just rife for voter fraud. A voting machine, it should be a paper ballot. And the most sophisticated computer that should be at a polling place is a counting machine. Just counts how many ballots are put into a secure box. That's all it needs to do. We don't need screens and digital screens, and we certainly don't need it connected to the internet. Explain to me why it needs to be connected to the internet. There's no reason in the world. And paper ballots cannot be messed with. Sure, they can be duplicated. There's other issues. But we've got to go to, even Barack Obama once said, election can't be rigged because it's not a big country election. It's 50 smaller elections. But if you start networking this stuff on the internet and machines talking to each other, we're screwed. So we need paper-based safeguards could prevent a lot of this. Every fraudulent ballot cancels out the lawful vote of a citizen. And that is a direct violation of Equal Protection Clause. Bureaucracies protecting themselves rather than citizens' rights. This does show a danger of entrenched, unaccountable government systems. So what did they find? What do they have to answer to? Well, for one thing, when they did this audit, they found 255,000 early votes without any record. So raised by auditors and unexplained ballots compared to the official voter rolls. That's a significant number of ballots. Not to mention that they've also found 23 mail-in ballots, but these mail-in ballots came from addresses that the people no longer lived at. So people who moved, whether out of state or just to a different home in the state, mail-in ballots from that address came in when they don't live there. And there was 23,000 duplicate votes. So this was another case where there were 23,000 same voter ID. So they found that the same voter, the ID of that voter, that person at that address, has been linked to more than one ballot in the system. So there's duplicate. That means somebody's taking your ballot. It's the same reason, and I've talked about this before, I'm not for any of this automatic voter registration like the registry wants to do, or they do with when you renew your license, get your license, and then all over they have all kinds of programs, right? EPT people. Remember way back when they did that, sent out all the voter. So EBT, which is the SNAP, right? The card, the food stamp card is what you might commonly know it as. It's the SNAP program, right? The EBT. It was I think it was 2013. Don't hold me to the date. It was years ago that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts decided, hey, why don't we do a voter drive among the benefits people who are receiving the SNAP benefits. So we'll mail voter registration forms out to all of these people who are getting the EBT card. Do you know they had like 16,000 of the voter registration ballots they sent out? 16,000 came back undeliverable, or they don't live there. I'm letting that sink in for a second. 16,000 people who are getting hundreds of dollars a month, maybe $1,000 a month put on the EBT card don't even live at the address that we think they live at, or the address that they say they live at isn't deliverable. It doesn't exist. And you're going to tell me there's no fraud in the government? There's no fraud in the EBT program? Side on that, just as a side note.
Golly.
So now you have 23,000 voters, the IDs linked to multiple ballots. And this is the good one, because this happened in many states. There were 9,000 more ballots received, mailed back in to the clerk than was officially issued. So say they mailed out 40,000 ballots, that's fine. They got the 40 plus 9,000 more. How do you get back more ballots than you physically mailed out? Somebody just took blank ballots, filled them in, and just mass mailed them in, folks. And then they had a large number of counterfeit ballots were flagged. This is paper printing inconsistencies, meaning that the ballots they received don't look quite right. They look like a ballot. They kind of look like what we sent out, what we officially printed, but it's off a little bit. So now you got to say, well, which are frauds? What is fraud here? Now, the Maricopa County election officials are disputing each and every category, right? Claiming many were errors of class. No kidding. That's the whole point. This was all an error. Stop with the mass mail in. If you want an absentee, we had a system for that. The absentee ballot. Before the election, if you were either going to be out of town or maybe you're physically, it's hard to be mobile or whatever your case is, you just call the clerk and say, I'd like an absentee ballot. They mail a ballot to the address of record. You sign in front of a witness. They send it back. They check your signature and they put it in a box and they wait for election day and then they count it. That's simple. So you know what? We've had mail-in ballot drop boxes for years. We call them United States Post Office boxes. These unchecked, unmanned, unlooked at boxes that people can drive up at 2 o'clock in the morning with a big box of ballots and dump it into, as we've seen on video after video of surveillance, can't and shouldn't happen. So, of course, they're claiming, nope, none of it happened, none of it's good. Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution clearly leaves states in charge of elections, but subject to congressional regulation. In the Equal Protection Clause, fraudulent ballots nullify lawful votes, and that is a constitutional concern. Look at the historical Bush versus Gore in the 2000 election. That underscored the inconsistent and unfair counting methods. Remember the hanging chads back in the day? But this is going to wrap up the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, back tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Same bad time, same bad channel. Follow me on social media at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. That will do it for me, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Joe, out.